In this video, I'll be examining the recent Cody and Satori interview with Project Fear. While it was released recently, this video was filmed on the 5th of November, which predates the response video that Cody and Satori put out in the same month. I also want to go through some of the wider implications of their responses and what direction I believe they'll take from here. Before delving into the interview, I want you to understand the position I held before viewing it. I don't believe that Cody and Satori have a supernatural ability to speak to the dead. It's my belief they are akin to magicians performing for an unquestioning audience. It's a trick. At the same time, it was my belief that after a number of months and dozens, if not hundreds of videos about Cody and Satori, that it was time to move on and let those still willing to be fooled, be fooled. There is a point at which the information is out there for anyone skeptical enough to want to find it. If they still believe at this point, it's because they want to believe, and they are unlikely to have their minds changed by external forces. Their performance has been so thoroughly debunked by this point that there is no further information that can be gained from additional videos about the subject. I know that's hypocritical coming from someone who is currently writing and editing a video on that same subject, but I'm hoping to add some nuance to what has been quite a black and white discussion. One thing that I try to keep in mind whenever I view material about these two is that they are flawed human beings, and that they shouldn't be hounded to the ends of the earth for performing a trick. We all make mistakes, and I know I've been in situations where I've doubled down on a lie, even though admitting to it would have made things far simpler in the long run. I'm not saying that what they are doing is good, but I can understand the pressure that might be on them to maintain the lie in front of a worldwide audience. I'm also not saying that people can't be angry about the things that Cody and Satori appear to be lying about. It just isn't the perspective I try to approach things from. Being angry or impassioned about things doesn't help me make a coherent point. With that said, let's talk about Project Fear's interview with Cody and Satori. Early on in the interview, Satori claims that they do not accept money directly from people they perform for.
We are taking it very seriously though, so we make certain rules for ourselves, things that we can't do, like we can't take money from the people directly that we're helping with this method of communication. I
find that this statement is likely to be true if taken literally. It's probably true that they don't take money directly from the people they help. They aren't holding their hand out to the people in front of them and saying, "It's $100 for us to perform this act." Are they benefiting from this act in other ways, though? Yes, they are. Whether they're being paid to perform their act at the Conjuring House with the money coming from the owners, or whether it's benefiting from the notoriety and exposure in order to generate interest in their other ventures. This statement is one that is technically the truth, but one which can be seen as disingenuous when the slightest scrutiny is applied. When Project Fear asks Satori what her father, Jason Hawes, thinks of her abilities, Satori responds by saying that he was skeptical at first, but that she convinced him it was real by doing private sessions in which she claims that there was knowledge they provided which was not available on the internet.
If you're into the paranormal, you know Jason Hawes.
Yes.
So, what does your dad think of these abilities that you guys have?
Okay, all right. So, my dad at first was very skeptical, which obviously I even was, so that makes perfect sense. Be skeptical. My dad was like, okay, how is this happening? Are they finding information? Things like that. Obviously, he doesn't want to assume that about me, but obviously he's going to look into it because he's Jason Hawes. So we started doing sessions and things, and then things would start happening, like he would witness private sessions and people would be crying because they found out information that you can't search up on the internet. Like we were confirming things that happened in privacy. It went from skepticism to he's definitely like, I don't know how it's happening. It's happening. You can't disprove it. He's tried. And so whatever is working, keep going. Keep doing it. So he's very supportive of it. He's like, definitely not my thing, but it's working for you, paving your own way, do it. So he's very supportive. My family's very supportive.
This is a very vague appeal to authority that is being made, with no evidence provided to back it up. Regardless of what Jason has done to confirm his daughter's abilities, there is only Satori and Jason's word that any experiment was done, and a father debunking his own daughter doesn't hold much credibility. What kind of experiment might convince me that Cody and Satori have the power to communicate with spirits via tapping? Experiment runners could find people who have no online presence at all. People from no or low technology communities such as the Amish would make for a good participant in this experiment. Fake profiles could also be introduced online that can be located via Google, but aren't real people, with real dead relatives that Cody and Satori could communicate with. If these types of control group were introduced into an experiment, and Cody and Satori were still able to provide real information to those people, it would go a long way to convincing me that this is a real ability. The first time Cody and Satori bring up the theory of joint popping as a source of the taps, they call it comical, and Satori immediately brings up Cody having had cancer, and that if he popped a joint, it wouldn't go back in.
Some
of it's been quite comical, to be honest.
It's been kind of funny.
We've gotten a laugh out of some of it. Just some of the theories that people are coming up with, like we're aliens and...
Yeah, we were joint popping, and I'm like, Cody had cancer. If he popped a joint, it wasn't going back. Like, things like that.
I'm going to accept that Cody has had cancer without looking into it at all. I'm doing this out of respect and a presumption that outside of their paranormal trickery, they are decent human beings who don't lie about things like that. But having said that, bringing it up in this way feels like a play for sympathy. What kind of person would question a man who had cancer? Whether this was Satori's intent or not, it comes off as an attempt to divert people's attention away from a credible theory. It isn't the only time they bring up his cancer either.
Colby, we're not obviously popping our joints or anything. You can see, my arms in the videos, and Cody, again, I like to make this joke, if Cody popped a joint, it wouldn't be going back in because he has really bad bones and joints from cancer.
Project Fear bring up the idea that Cody and Satori could prove their critics wrong by doing a video without socks and shoes on. Satori's first response to this is weak. They've created a narrative throughout the interview that some skeptical people are not ready to have their worldview change so radically, and that proving it has previously caused a lot of harm to people who were not prepared to believe.
But the big thing is that I like to look at it like this, for one. If we were to give no way for people to have any sort of skepticism, and they're not meant to believe in this yet, or they're not meant to have these experiences, or they won't take it well, what would happen tomorrow if we proved it for certain? Would that create chaos? That's something I'm afraid of, for one.
We've definitely learned that there's some people that you just can't change their mind.
And there are some people, and the reason we say what we say is because there are some people that we have done this for, and we've gone out of our way to try to prove ourselves to in a private setting, and it's done more harm than good for them. Mentally, they weren't ready for it. Religiously, they weren't ready for it. They literally had a negative effect from what we did.
They're willing to perform their act on anyone who turns up at the Conjuring House, where this has been shown to cause people to break down into tears and freak out. But they are unwilling to perform the same tapping act while barefoot to a skeptic. If I follow their logic, then they are knowingly causing distress to the people who visit, as well as being willing to cause distress to a wider online audience who may have previously been skeptical of the paranormal. If they are already causing that harm, why hesitate when it comes to proving that the tapping is real? Another reason that Satori gives for not wanting to perform the act barefoot is that she doesn't want her feet all over the internet. That's fair enough. Luckily, that can be avoided. Their previous answers have made it clear to me that they're unwilling to do any kind of experiment that would expose how the act works. But here are some methods that don't require her to be barefoot. They could allow someone to touch the top of their shoes while they perform the act. If there are no vibrations coming from the shoes, that's a point in their favor. They could allow microphones to be set up in such a way that it would pinpoint the source of the sound. They could put a sensor in their shoes that detect vibrations and have them stand on a platform that is isolated from vibrations in some way. If the sensor doesn't detect vibrations, this would be another point in their favor. They could have them stand in a container filled with water. If the sound isn't muffled and you can't see vibrations on the surface of the water, that would be proof toward it being real. With Cody and Satori having made 2 videos where they talk more in-depth about their ability, it's possible to compare these and see what direction they appear to be taking. Keep in mind that the clips that you have just seen were shot earlier in time than the response on their own channel. I believe that during the Project Fear interview, they were caught a little off guard by some of the questions and were forced to present arguments that they may not have wished to continue with if the statement on their own channel is any indication. Let's examine the claim that Jason Hawes attempted to debunk Satori's abilities, especially how it morphs depending on what Jason knows Satori has said. On their own channel, they make no mention of her father or any of the experiments he performed. Jason also removes this claim between his first and second responses. On the 14th of November, Jason claimed that he performed experiments, which was in line with what Satori said during her Project Fear interview. A day later, Cody and Satori released a statement that no longer made claims about Jason doing anything. And on the 26th of January 2024, Jason released another response video where instead he said, "I don't know if she faked things." This is a marked change in direction, and while I can only speculate about its meaning, it's interesting that the claim vanishes. It suggests that after the Project Fear interview, Cody and Satori may have decided to take their defense strategy away from the scientific, which can easily be questioned, to one of faith and belief. It goes from, "We performed experiments and it can't be disproved," to "I'm sorry that you can't believe us." It's much easier to defend a position that is poorly defined to begin with. Repeating the mantras, "We don't fully understand how it works," and "We'll ask the spirits if they'll allow it," is something that they know many believers in the paranormal will accept without question. Cody and Satori rely on the inherent lack of skepticism from people who believe in paranormal occurrences without engaging in critical thinking. Decades of paranormal investigations encourage this lack of skepticism as well. Like any belief-based system, the paranormal can be whatever the person investigating or watching wishes it to be. It allows psychic mediums like Cody and Satori to thrive. It's an environment where not understanding something is potential proof of, well, anything. I believe this will be the final long-form statement that Cody and Satori will release. They have said all it's possible to on the matter, and any further questioning will meet with a polite dismissal and a reminder that it isn't their place to make you believe. While they have hinted that they'll offer additional proof in the future, I don't believe they'll ever do this under controlled conditions. Their refusal to do further experimentation is all the proof a reasonable person should require to know that this isn't real. The people who remain are the ones who wish to. Some may consider it a duty to continue talking about a topic until every last person is convinced, but I believe this quote from Derren Brown, a renowned trickster, is apt.
I'm kind of interested in taking a step back and going, well, is there any evidence for it? But you realise when you look at what's happening in these readings, no one cares particularly about the evidence. They just want to be told that their loved ones are still there. And the moment even the slightest, faintest implication that may have not been quite what it seemed is hurtful and horrible for them. And of course, it's much more likely to be angry at me for suggesting that than they are at Joe.
Some people will continue to believe because it brings them comfort. Cody and Satori may bring comfort to people despite the dubious nature of what they do. As I mentioned during the introduction, the videos on Cody and Satori have been thorough and bountiful, and the Project Fear interview cements that for me. It's not satisfying to leave something unresolved, to have unanswered questions. It's equally unsatisfying to see additional videos arrive in a feed, only to discover it's another time they performed the same act with no variation. The only questions I have left are these. Will they stop, and how? I believe they will continue unless some unequivocal evidence appears. If that evidence does appear, and they find themselves unable to ignore it, I expect they will craft an excuse that blames the people who were skeptical. They will say that the spirits sensed the skepticism and no longer wish to converse. Speaking of exit strategies, I've been editing this video for an eternity, and the only thing left to say is thanks for watching.